Green Hill Community Park woke to the kind of spring sunlight that made even the quietest corners look soft around the edges. The air smelled faintly of damp wood chips and wildflowers, and a few sparrows flitted between the trees that lined the playground's edge. On a swing beneath one of those trees sat Emily Hayes. She was 7, though sometimes she looked older, like a child who had been asked to carry more than she could lift. Her small fingers curled around the rusty chains of the swing, unmoving. Her sneakers touched the ground, but they didn't push. Her lips remained pressed together, as if every word she'd ever known had gone into hiding. It had been 3 years since Emily last spoke, since the car accident that left more than scars and silence in its wake. Words had once come easily to her, bright and tumbling. Now, silence was her language. Her mother, Olivia, sat on a nearby bench pretending to check her phone. She wasn't scrolling. There were no emails worth checking on a Saturday morning. The screen merely acted as a shield against the glances of other parents, some curious, others pitying. She didn't need pity. She needed a miracle. Olivia wore her usual weekend armor, black leggings, gray zip-up hoodie, and an expression that said, "I'm fine," even when she wasn't. Her heels bounced quietly, not from nerves, but habit, always moving, always calculating. In her world as CEO of a medtech firm, there was a solution for everything, except this. A sudden laugh broke through the low hum of the park. It was warm, full-chested, and came from the direction of the tire swing. Olivia looked up. There, pushing the swing with practiced ease, was a man in a faded navy hoodie and jeans that looked well-loved. His skin was deep brown, and the child in the swing, likely his son, threw his head back in delight. The man's laugh rose again, unhurried and full, like the kind that warmed a whole space even before you realized it had. He caught Olivia's glance and offered a polite nod, acknowledgement without intrusion. She returned it out of reflex, then looked quickly back at her screen. The man said something to his son, who hopped off the swing. Then, holding the boy's hand, he began walking slowly toward Emily. Olivia's spine straightened. She watched closely. Her instincts as a mother, sharpened by years of therapy visits, specialists, and well-meaning strangers, rose like a tide. The man approached the swing but didn't speak right away. He lowered himself into a crouch, his movements deliberate and calm, and let go of his son's hand. The boy, light-eyed, with wind-tousled hair, stood back, giving space. The man looked Emily in the eye. "Hi there," he said gently, as though greeting a deer in the woods. He didn't move closer, just held out his palm in the air between them, not demanding, just offering. He glanced over at Olivia, an unspoken question in his eyes. Olivia hesitated. Everything in her told her to step in, protect, interrupt, explain. But something in the man's posture, the way he waited without expectation, made her pause. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't pushing. He was simply there. Emily looked at his hand. Seconds stretched. A bird chirped in the distance. A dog barked twice near the trailhead. Still, Emily didn't move. Then, quietly, barely perceptible, she released one hand from the chain and placed it in his palm. The man smiled, not broadly, but gently, like he'd just been handed a secret. "You know," he said, his voice lower now, intimate without being invasive, "my son thinks that slide over there is only for the bravest kids." He motioned toward the smaller slide tucked behind the sandbox. "But I think I've met someone braver." He lifted his finger, not to touch, just to point under her chin. Then he stopped, letting the moment breathe. The air tightened around Olivia. Her heart thudded. And then, just like that, Emily's lips parted. The sound was faint, a word, not a breath. "How?" she whispered. Olivia's phone dropped into her lap. The man didn't flinch. He didn't react with surprise or triumph. His smile remained steady, his voice even. "Because brave kids don't have to be loud," he said. "They just speak up when it really matters." Emily blinked at him. "What's your name?" she asked, barely above a breath. "I'm Jack," he replied, nodding, "and this is Mason, my son." Mason gave a shy wave, still a few feet away. Emily looked from Mason to Jack. "I'm Emily," she said. Olivia's breath caught on the edge of her throat. It felt as if someone had knocked the wind out of her, but in the best way possible. Jack leaned in slightly, his tone almost conspiratorial. "The best slide here isn't the big one. It's the little one back there. The sun hits it just right. Makes you go faster." Emily's brows lifted, curious. "Want to try it?" Jack asked, his tone still soft. Emily looked toward Olivia. Olivia nodded, slow but sure. "Go ahead, honey." Jack didn't take Emily's hand. He simply rose and walked beside her, keeping pace, not leading. Mason bounded ahead, pointing toward the slide with the exaggerated excitement of a child used to cheering others on. Emily followed, slow but deliberate. Olivia remained seated on the bench, her hands clasped tight in her lap. She could hear the laughter drifting from the sandbox. For the first time in 3 years, it sounded like a thread stitching something broken back together. 10 minutes later, Emily returned to the swing. Her cheeks were pink, her lips were upturned. Not a smile exactly, but something close. She climbed back onto the swing with ease, as if reclaiming a place. Jack walked over and leaned slightly toward Olivia. "She's got a lot she wants to say," he said quietly. "She just needs someone to ask the right way." Olivia turned, her voice unsteady. "How did you do that?" Jack shrugged lightly. "Sometimes kindness is the only language that works." The breeze tugged at his hoodie. Olivia studied his face, trying to memorize every line, every scar. This wasn't a man she could thank and walk away from. He had just opened a door she'd been pounding on for years. "Jack, wait!" He turned. Mason had wandered back toward the slide, giving them a moment alone. Olivia rose to her feet. A dozen questions pressed against her throat, but only one escaped. "Would you have coffee with us?" she asked. "My treat. It's been 3 years since I heard her voice." Jack hesitated, his eyes flicking toward Mason, then back. "I don't usually do coffee shops," he said, "but there's a small place on Oak Street. Quiet." Olivia exhaled, her voice trembling, but sure. "I'll follow you." Emily looked up at her mother. "Can Mason ride in our car?" Jack smiled, grounding the moment with a simple rule. "Maybe next time, kiddo. Today, we ride together." Emily nodded, as if accepting something bigger than a rule. A rhythm, a boundary, a beginning. Olivia watched them walk back toward the parking lot, the shadows stretching behind them in the late morning sun. Her daughter, once silent, now humming the possibility of sound, glanced over her shoulder with the faintest smile. And Olivia knew this wasn't just another Saturday at the park. This was the day everything changed. The Oak Ivy Diner sat on the corner of Oak Street like it had been there forever. Its awning was faded, the windows slightly foggy around the edges, and the scent of apple pie wafted out even before you stepped through the door. Inside, the booths were covered in red vinyl, worn but comfortable, and the counter held a glass case of rotating cakes that no one ever seemed to order, but everyone liked seeing. Jack pushed the door open and held it for Olivia and Emily. The bell above it jingled, and the woman behind the counter gave a nod that said she'd seen 1,000 mornings just like this one. Olivia wasn't used to places like this. She was more of a double espresso to go kind of person. Fast-paced, paper cups, efficient. But this diner made time slow down without asking. They took a booth by the window. Emily sat beside Olivia at first, then scooted across to sit beside Mason. Neither child spoke much, but their legs swung in quiet rhythm under the table, like two metronomes finding the same beat. A waitress came by, middle-aged with silver streaks in her braid. She handed them menus without fuss. "Y'all want drinks to start?" she asked, her accent soft and southern. "Coffee," Jack said. "Black." "Same," Olivia replied, then paused. "And some apple pie?" The waitress raised an eyebrow, pleased. "Starting with dessert? That's the kind of energy I like." She turned to the kids. "You too?" Mason nodded. "Pie too, please." Emily looked at Olivia for confirmation. Olivia nodded, and Emily gave a shy thumbs up. The waitress grinned. 4 pies coming up. Once she left, there was a stretch of silence. Not awkward, just new. Jack leaned back against the booth. "This place has the best pie in town. No competition." Olivia gave a small smile. "You come here often?" "Not really. Used to bring my sister, back before she moved to care." Olivia didn't push. The space between his words felt intentional. "You were amazing with Emily today," she said instead. "I don't know how to say thank you." "You don't need to," Jack said. "She was ready. She just needed the right cue." Olivia blinked. "We've spent years, speech therapists, child psychologists, behavioral programs. Nothing worked." "Because most folks start with sound," Jack said. "But sometimes silence is the door, not the wall." That made her stop. She'd spent so long trying to break the silence, she never thought to listen to it. "You were military?" she asked, noticing the way he scanned the room without seeming to. He hadn't sat with his back to the door. Jack nodded. "Combat medic. 2 tours. Last one. Didn't come home the same." Olivia waited. "Got hit outside Kabul. Lost 2 of my squad. My hearing's fine, but the world got too loud for a while." He paused. "My sister stopped talking after our dad died, for a year. I used to sit with her every night and just breathe." "Did it help?" Olivia asked. "It helped her know she wasn't alone," Jack said. "One night she started humming. That was the start. The pies arrived. Warm, flaky, cinnamon-heavy. The waitress slid plates in front of each of them and refilled Jack's coffee. "On the house," she said with a wink to Mason. "You've got good taste." Mason grinned. Emily smiled too, a real one this time, small and crooked but bright. Jack turned to Emily. "You ever notice how the best pie melts before it's all gone?" Emily nodded. "Means you gotta enjoy the middle part the most," he said. Olivia sipped her coffee. It was too strong, slightly bitter. She didn't mind. "My company, Horizon Tech," she began. "We're building child communication tools, AI, speech mapping, response recognition. It's all very clinical." Jack nodded, not interrupting. "We talk a lot about optimization, output, efficiency." She looked at Emily. "But maybe what we need is safety." "Safe," Jack said, tasting the word like it had weight. "You did something today no algorithm could. You created calm." Jack shrugged. "It's not magic. I call it SAFE, just a little guide I use when I'm with kids." "SAFE?" Olivia asked, her brow rising. "Yeah, it's an acronym. S is for see, really observe the child. A is ask, but only gentle, open questions. F is follow. Follow their lead, don't push. E is empower. Let them feel they own the moment." Olivia sat back. "That's better than anything we've come up with." Jack laughed lightly. "I made it up for my sister. Seemed to stick. Would you be willing to, I don't know, show this to my team? Just once? No pressure." Jack stirred his coffee. "I'm not a therapist, not certified. I barely like being indoors." Olivia smiled. "That's probably why it works." Jack looked at her for a long moment. 1 session, no cameras, no press, no suits trying to package what they don't understand. "Deal," Olivia said immediately. Across the table, Mason showed Emily how to cut the pie with the side of her fork. She tried. It crumbled. They both laughed. Olivia leaned in. "You're not what I expected." Jack took another bite of pie. "Most people say that, usually when they see my skin." His tone wasn't bitter, just real. Olivia didn't flinch. "I meant you're quiet. It's powerful." Jack looked down. Used to think quiet made me weak. Now I think it makes room for others. They sat in silence for a beat, the kind that didn't need filling. The bell above the door rang again. A family walked in. A toddler screamed. Jack's shoulders tensed for a second, then relaxed. Olivia noticed. "Still hard?" she asked gently. "Sometimes," he said, "but I've learned to fall safe before I fly." She held his gaze. "What does that mean?" Jack took a breath. "That if I trip, I don't let it break me. I land, I pause, I reset. Then I get back up." He tapped the side of his cup. "Safe isn't just for kids." Emily, finishing her pie, turned to Olivia. "Can we come back here next week?" It was the most words she'd said in a row since ever. Olivia blinked fast. "Of course, sweetheart." Mason reached into his hoodie and pulled out a sticker. Gold with a cartoon bandage and the words, "You tried," on it. He stuck it on Emily's wrist. Jack stood. "We better head out." Olivia rose too, gathering napkins. Jack looked at her. "I don't teach in classrooms. I teach by being there." "That's exactly what we need," Olivia said. As they stepped outside, the sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. The air smelled like damp concrete and sugar. Emily skipped once, then caught herself. She looked up at Jack. "Can you show me the other safe steps next time?" Jack grinned. "You already know them. We just give names to what you're already doing." Olivia watched the two walk ahead, their pace easy. She'd walked into this diner hoping for answers. She left, knowing she'd found a beginning. The Horizon Communication Tech headquarters didn't look like much from the outside, just another glass-fronted building in the Maple Glen Industrial Park, nestled between a dental software startup and a boutique dog treat company. But inside, it was clean and open, full of calming whites, soft lights, and walls that curved instead of cornered. Olivia walked beside Jack through the main hallway, badge clipped to her belt, heels clicking softly on the recycled wood floor. Jack wore his usual, dark jeans, soft flannel shirt, worn boots that seemed more suited for hiking trails than tech corridors. But something about him, maybe the quiet way he moved or the way he looked ahead without hesitation, fit the space just fine. "We'll be in the small lab," Olivia said, gesturing to the glass door ahead. "It's usually used for sensory testing, but we've cleared it out." Jack nodded. "Quiet room?" "Soundproofed," she said. "Low-stimulus lighting, no buzzing vents. We made sure." Inside, a few team members waited around a circular table. Claire, lead UX researcher, gave a tight smile. Ethan, software integration, glanced up briefly from his tablet. Dr. Patel, the child development advisor, folded her hands calmly. They were ready, but also clearly unsure what they were about to witness. A child sat off to the side on a beanbag. Nora, 7, with tight curls and eyes that didn't quite meet anyone's gaze. Her fingers tapped her knees in a silent rhythm. Mason, invited along for familiarity, sat nearby, building a tower out of wooden blocks. Jack entered and took a long look at the room before speaking. Then, without introduction, he walked to the whiteboard and uncapped a marker. "Safe," he wrote in large letters. He turned to the group. "See, ask, follow, empower." Claire raised an eyebrow. "And this replaces our current behavioral mapping algorithm?" Jack looked at her. "It's not replacement. It's reminder. Before any tech works, the human in the room needs to work." Ethan leaned forward. "We've been trying to map real-time response triggers for months. No consistent data, too many variables." Jack nodded. "That's because kids aren't consistent. They're human." He turned back to the board and wrote under each letter, S, see, notice before you name, watch breath, posture, hands, listen with your eyes. A, ask questions with no wrong answers. No, why are you doing that? More like, is that helping? F, follow, let them lead, even if it's just choosing the color of the block. E, empower, celebrate effort, not results. Let them know every move counts. Claire crossed her arms. What about metrics? How do we measure this? Jack didn't flinch. If you're in the room waiting to measure, you're not in the room to connect. Dr. Patel smiled faintly. Jack walked over to Nora and crouched nearby, not close enough to touch, but close enough to be noticed. He didn't say a word. Nora's fingers kept tapping. Jack placed his hand flat on the floor beside him, palm down. Seconds passed, then minutes. He closed his eyes, breathed softly. Eventually, Nora looked up, just once, then returned to tapping. Jack didn't react. Then he opened his eyes and whispered, "Mason?" Mason looked up. "Do you want to trade blocks with Nora?" Mason nodded, got up, and walked slowly over. He offered a purple block. Nora paused, looked at the block. Then she took it. Quietly. That was it. No applause, no breakthrough moment. But Olivia, watching from behind the one-way mirror, pressed her hand to her heart. Back in the lab, Jack stood. "That's safe," he said. "It looks like nothing, but it's the start of everything." Ethan leaned back. "You didn't ask her to do anything." "She already knows what to do," Jack said. "She just needed permission to do it safely." Claire's voice softened. "You weren't waiting for a result." "I was waiting with her," Jack said. He turned to Olivia. "This isn't about a program. It's about a posture." Olivia nodded. "Can you train our staff to model that?" Jack hesitated. "Not in modules or videos, but I can show them, one person at a time." Claire raised a new concern. "This doesn't scale. We can't wait with 100 children." Dr. Patel interjected. "Maybe the point isn't to scale the moment. Maybe it's to replicate the mindset." Jack looked at the team. "Kids don't care how fast you respond. They care how real you are when you do." The room was quiet. He erased the board, then wrote a single line, "Never turn a child into a test." He looked back once, then opened the door. Olivia caught up with him in the hallway. "That line? Can I put it in our training manual?" Jack smiled faintly. "Put it on the wall." They stood there for a beat. "He liked it," Olivia said, gesturing back to Ethan. "He didn't say anything." "That's how I know," Olivia said. "He only argues with things he thinks are wrong." Jack glanced toward the exit. "Next time, I bring the R." "The what?" He looked at her. "It's a part we forget. Before safe." She waited. "Remove the noise," he said. "Stimuli, distractions, bias, the stuff we carry in." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "You're building a blueprint." Jack shook his head. "I'm just listening." They stepped into the afternoon sun, the light catching dust in the air like quiet confetti. Behind them, Nora sat beside Mason, placing purple blocks carefully in a circle. Inside the room, on the whiteboard, one line remained: "Never turn a child into a test." The Rainbow Center for Child Wellness sat at the edge of Maple Glen, housed in a low brick building with mural-covered walls and pinwheels spinning from the fence. It wasn't a clinic. Not exactly. It wasn't a school either. It was something in between. A space for children who didn't quite fit the rhythms of the world, and for the adults learning how to listen better. Inside, the therapy room had been transformed for the demo session. Soft yellow lamps glowed overhead. The floor was covered with fabric mats, beanbags, and sensory tools laid out with care. Paper stars hung from the ceiling. No harsh lighting, no buzzing. Olivia stood near the observation window, arms crossed. She wasn't tense, but she was tuned in, watching. Beside her, Victor Hale, CFO, sipped from a metallic travel mug. Claire and Ethan were already seated inside, talking in low tones. Dr. Patel adjusted clipboards quietly. The rest of the room waited. Jack entered last, walking with measured calm. He wore a soft gray pullover and darker jeans than usual. Mason trailed behind him, carrying a small bag of quiet toys. The trial child today was Mia, 6 years old, newly referred. She had large eyes and a stiff posture, her shoulders slightly raised like she was expecting something loud to happen. Jack knelt beside her, not speaking. He simply pulled out a small, rubbery dinosaur and placed it on the floor between them. Mia didn't look. Her mother, standing near the wall, gave a tight smile and stepped back. The session began. Mason sat a few feet away, humming softly as he began building a block bridge. Jack stayed close to Mia, observing but not intervening. The room was still, expectant. Then someone in the back, perhaps a staff member unfamiliar with the protocols, sprayed sanitizer into their hands. The sound was subtle, but the scent, sharp, alcohol-heavy, cut through the room. Mia froze. Jack's eyes darted toward the smell. It was too late. Mia let out a sharp whimper, scrambled back and bolted from the mat. Her mother gasped. Jack stood instantly but didn't chase. "Mason," he said softly. Mason paused mid-build. He nodded and began gently putting the blocks away. Jack turned to the group. "Session pause. Give me the hallway." He walked toward the exit without rush. Mia was near the coat rack, curled up by a bench, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her breathing was fast. The overhead fluorescent buzz returned in the hallway. Olivia stepped out, following at a distance. Jack crouched nearby. "I didn't see it coming," he said, mostly to himself. Mia didn't answer. Jack reached into his bag and pulled out a small cotton pouch. He opened it slowly and took out a folded scarf. It smelled like lavender. He placed it near Mia's feet, not touching her. "Smells better than sanitizer," he whispered. "I carry it for me, too." Mia's breathing slowed, just slightly. Jack looked up at Olivia. "I didn't remove the trigger. I tried to connect without clearing the space first." Olivia didn't speak. Back inside, Ethan was muttering, "We can't control every variable." Victor frowned. "You invited him here based on playground results. And this? This is a professional setting." Jack returned a few minutes later alone. He didn't apologize. He didn't excuse. He walked straight to the whiteboard. He erased safe, then wrote R, remove or reduce stimuli, S, CA, ask F, follow E, empower. He put the marker down. "Before we connect," he said, "we clear the space, the noise, the expectations, the distractions, even the smell." Victor folded his arms. "That's convenient. Add a letter after a failed demo?" Jack looked him in the eye. "That failed moment? It's where the truth came out. Mia told us she couldn't breathe in there. We just didn't ask the right way." Claire stood. "So are safe?" Jack nodded. "It's not neat, but it's real." Dr. Patel murmured, "That step was always implied. Maybe we needed it named." Victor's voice remained tight. "What you're describing doesn't scale. It's too slow, too fragile." Jack picked up a block from Mason's earlier pile. He placed it gently on the floor. So are children. The room was quiet again. Later, in the staff lounge, Olivia found Jack sitting alone staring at a half-full mug. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "This is why I don't usually do inside work." Olivia sat down. "You were right. We created a space with soft light and pretty posters, but we forgot the air, the smell." Jack rubbed his temple. "I keep thinking of Mia's face, her eyes." "She came back in," Olivia said. "Later, she and Mason played together in the hallway. She held the scarf." Jack looked up. "That matters." "You didn't fail," Olivia added. "You adapted." He chuckled, tired. "You don't need to defend me." "I'm not," she said. "I'm learning." Jack sat back. "People like Victor, they'll always need things boxed and labeled. This work doesn't do that." "Maybe," Olivia said, "but it deserves the room anyway." Jack glanced out the window. "You think they'll cut the program?" "No," Olivia said, "but they'll want structure." "Then we give them our safe," Jack said. "But not just for kids. We need one more piece." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Safe crying," he said. "Adults need permission too." There was silence. Then Olivia nodded. "We'll build it." Jack looked at her. "No," she corrected herself. "You'll build it. I'll protect it." A beat passed between them, steady and quiet. Mason burst in then, holding up a drawing. "Emily made this for you," he said to Jack. It was a crayon picture. 2 swings, a big slide, and 3 stick figures holding hands. One wore a patch on his arm. Jack smiled, folded it carefully, and tucked it into his pocket. Outside, the sun was beginning to lower. The day hadn't gone as planned. But then again, healing never does. The town's annual spring wellness fair had always been a cheerful kind of chaos. Booths with green smoothies, yoga demos, and that one guy who played the didgeridoo near the recycling tent. But this year, tucked into the corner of Green Hill Park under the tall maples, something quieter was taking shape. They called it the Safe Corner. It wasn't big. A shaded patch of grass, a white canvas tent with string lights, and a few soft chairs arranged in a circle. Jack had placed signs around, "This is a low-sound zone. No clapping, snap fingers, or smile instead." And at the entrance, a laminated poster that read, "You don't have to be okay to join, you just have to come as you are." Olivia stood near the path with a clipboard, not because she needed to, but because it gave her something to hold. She watched families drift past, some curious, others hesitant. Emily sat on a folded blanket near the tree, gently tracing her fingers through a tub of colored rice. Mason sat beside her, showing how to dig for small plastic animals buried underneath. Their rhythm was slow and steady. No instructions, just presence. Jack moved among the parents, answering quiet questions. He wore his soft gray hoodie, sleeves pushed to the elbows, revealing a tattoo Olivia hadn't noticed before. Simple lines that looked like wind or breath. A mother approached with her son, maybe 5. The boy clung tightly to her leg. "Does he need to talk?" she asked Jack, her voice low. "No," Jack said. "He just needs to not feel watched." She blinked. "That's different." "It's the start," Jack said, smiling. A sudden burst of sound, balloons popping from a birthday booth nearby, shattered the calm. Children flinched. Some parents laughed nervously. Emily froze. Her shoulders tightened, her hands stilled in the rice, her breathing shortened. Olivia's body reacted before her brain did, stepping forward, half-reaching. But Jack was already there. He didn't touch Emily. He just knelt a few feet away and began breathing. Slow, audible inhales, quiet exhales. His own hands rested on his knees. Mason didn't speak. He simply slid the tub of rice a few inches closer to her. Emily's eyes darted toward the balloon booth, then back to Jack. "I hate that sound," she whispered. Jack nodded. "So does my heart." Emily let out a half-breath that might have been a laugh or a release. "I want to go under," she said. Jack pointed to the tent. "The stars are waiting." Emily crawled into the fabric tent, lying back on the soft mat. Olivia followed, crouching at the edge. Inside, paper stars gently spun from the ceiling, catching bits of filtered sunlight. Jack didn't follow. He just sat outside, close enough to protect the space, far enough not to fill it. Inside the tent, Emily whispered, "Leaves and sand, wind and laughing." Olivia tilted her head. "What's that, sweetie?" Emily smiled faintly. "The things that help. That's what Jack calls it. My list." Outside, a father was arguing with a volunteer. "This is a public park. If my kid wants to play music, he should be able to." The volunteer replied softly, "You're welcome to play beyond the tree line. This zone is just gentler." The father scoffed and walked off. The music faded. Jack didn't respond. He didn't confront. He simply waited. Later, when the fair was thinning out and the sun had dipped lower in the sky, Emily emerged from the tent and made her way toward the small slide, the one Jack had pointed out on their first day. She climbed the ladder slowly. Mason waited at the bottom. At the top, she paused. Then, with deliberate control, she slid halfway down and let herself fall sideways, landing on the grass with a soft thud. No one gasped. She rolled onto her back, staring up at the trees. "I fell safe," she announced to the sky. Mason clapped, softly, palms together. Olivia walked over and sat beside Jack. "You see that?" she asked. Jack nodded. "She chose the fall." She didn't cry. "She didn't need to," Jack said. "She was in control." Olivia exhaled. "We've spent years trying to stop the fall." Jack looked at her. Sometimes the healing is in the falling. Yong. Across the lawn, Emily helped a younger child build a tower of pine cones. When one toppled, the child began to fuss. Emily whispered something. The child nodded, then tried again. Olivia touched Jack's arm lightly. "You ever think you'd be part of something like this?" Jack shook his head. "I thought I'd just keep showing up in small ways." "Well," Olivia said, "now you're a system." Jack grimaced playfully. "Don't make me a poster." She smiled. "Too late. Mason already drew one. It says, 'Mr. Jack, the calm boss.'" He chuckled. "That kid needs better marketing skills." They sat in silence. As the light shifted and the wind picked up, a paper star from the tent broke loose and drifted into the air. Emily chased it, laughing. Mason followed. Jack watched them, eyes soft. "They're going to fly, aren't they?" Olivia said. "They already are," Jack replied. And this time, no one stopped to catch them. The maple memorial wall stood at the edge of town, nestled between the trees where the forest began to rise. It wasn't large or grand, just a stone arch with names etched in quiet dignity. No spotlight, just morning light and the sound of leaves whispering. Jack stood before it, hands in his jacket pockets. Mason sat on a nearby bench, swinging his legs and tracing letters carved into the granite. Jack's eyes landed on one name, Marcus Radin. "Hey, buddy," he said quietly to Mason. "Give me a minute?" Mason nodded, pulling out his sketchpad. Jack stepped forward, letting his fingertips rest on the cool stone. "I taught a girl to breathe," he murmured, "and a boy to wait. That counts, right?" He didn't expect an answer, but he felt one in the wind. Back in town, Olivia sat in the Horizon conference room with Victor, Claire, and Sabrina from the board. A new proposal sat on the table. Our Safe National Pilot plus Safe Crying Module. "This is soft science," Victor said. "No guarantee of ROI. Sabrina tapped her pen. "But we have data. Reduced escalation reports, improved caregiver retention, more child-led breakthroughs." "It's not scalable," Victor argued. Olivia spoke, her tone calm. "Empathy doesn't scale like code, but it ripples," Victor scoffed. "How do we sell crying?" Olivia looked him dead in the eye. "We're not selling tears. We're building permission. To pause, to reset, to not be perfect." He said nothing. Sabrina added, "We've never had this many parent requests for access." Victor shifted in his seat. Outside, Jack arrived, holding a folder. "I'm not here to pitch," he said simply. "Just here to return this." He placed the folder on the table. Inside were hand-drawn safe maps made by children. Colorful, crumpled, messy, true. "I don't want my name on this," he added. "No press, no photos." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because it's not mine," Jack said. "It belongs to the next kid who needs it, not the guy who stumbled into it." Later that afternoon, on the company lawn, a quiet ceremony was held. No stage, just folding chairs and apple pie. Jack stood beside Olivia as she handed him a slim envelope. 2-year contract, she said. Lead developer of nonverbal intervention protocols. Jack blinked. "That's a mouthful." Olivia grinned. "I know. You'll fix it." Mason ran across the lawn, followed by Emily. She wore a sticker that read, "I choose how I fall." Jack bent down. Emily looked up at him. "When I'm scared," she said, "I fall safe." He smiled. "And when you're okay?" Emily answered without pause, "I fly." Jack looked at Olivia. "When I'm okay, I help someone else fly." The children ran off laughing. Victor stood near the back, arms folded. Sabrina approached Jack. "We're updating the app, adding a button for adults to pause." Jack nodded. "Good. Adults forget how." Olivia handed him a small box. Inside, a patch, his old service one, cleaned and restitched, now bearing the letters, "Are Safe." "I had it restored," she said. "Thought it deserved a new mission." Jack said nothing, but his fingers curled around it tightly. As the sky turned a soft peach, Jack sat beside the new swing set. Fresh paint, low noise joints. He watched Emily teach a smaller child to climb. not loudly, just patiently. Near the picnic tables, someone began to hum. No one called for attention, no one gave a speech, and no one said, "The end." Because healing didn't come with a final line, it came with a breath, a pause, and the choice to keep going. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive with applause or grand declarations. It arrives quietly, in the steady breath of a child learning to fall safely, and in the quiet hands of a man no one expected to lead. This story began with silence and ended with flight, not because someone fixed what was broken, but because they stayed long enough to listen to what was whole. In a world that rushes to label, measure, and judge, this story reminds us dignity isn't granted by degrees or titles. It's affirmed in how we see one another, especially those society overlooks. A Black veteran, once dismissed, became a blueprint not just for restoring trust in children, but for reteaching humanity in adults. Within the Black community, too often silenced or stereotyped, this message resounds deeply. Quiet strength is still strength. And in places where voices have long been ignored, stillness can speak the loudest truth. Don't judge by appearances. Don't confuse volume with value. Justice, like healing, may not come loudly, but it always comes through those who stand gently, hold steady, and refuse to look away. Just like a lantern on a back porch during a storm, a single kind act from an unexpected soul can light a path we thought we lost. So take a breath. Reflect. Ask yourself who you've overlooked and who might be carrying a truth the world forgot to hear. If this story touched you, consider sharing it forward. Somewhere, someone, maybe in your neighborhood, maybe in the Black community, maybe sitting silent on a swing, is waiting for a moment of quiet that says, "You matter, you're safe, begin again." Jivisai